Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to this presentation on book traces, exploring the past through Marginalia in library collections. My name is Michael Rodriguez, and I am collection strategist at the University of Connecticut Library. Book Traces is a national research project that has received funding from the Council on Library and Information Resources, as well as the Andrew Mellon Foundation. It is based at the University of Virginia and led by Andy and Kristen. Andy is a professor of English, and Kristen is a project manager for UVA libraries. The goal of Book Traces is to identify books in academic libraries' circulating collections that contain interventions by past readers or owners. Interventions is a technical term for any readerly engagement with the text, whether inscribing their name on the flyleaf of the book or scribbling in its margins. These interventions give us insight into readers' lives and thought processes, as well as the reading cultures of the era. Because many 19th century and early 20th century academic library collections were built primarily through donations rather than acquisitions, Marginalia can also give us insights into the history of the university and its library. So how do we identify these interventions in our library books? We conduct a shelf sample. In UConn's case, we generated a spreadsheet of UConn library books containing title information, barcodes, Library of Congress call numbers, publication dates, and other metadata. We then limited that sample to books from 1925 or earlier, out of copyright materials, and to books in LC ranges such as theology and literature, where the incidence of interventions tends to be higher. We randomly selected 2,000 books from that grand total. We hired a student worker who went into the stacks with an iPad and a book truck, paged through each and every one of those 2,000 books in our sample, and photographed any interventions that she found. She then recorded the data in a mobile app that was developed by Book Traces for this purpose. Our findings mirrored what Book Traces has discovered nationally. Interventions of some kind were found in about 12% of the books we surveyed. 1.5% of these books contained what are called notable interventions, showing meaningful or sustained readerly engagement with the object at hand. Interventions ran the gamut from marginalia, gift inscriptions, glued-in letters, leaf pressings, and newspaper clippings. This prevalence suggests that sometimes old books in circulating collections aren't always just containers for content. Sometimes they also have unique artifactual value for scholars. UConn Library is weeding our print collections like everyone else, and we feel that participating in a project like Book Traces helps demonstrate to our community that we are thoughtfully handling our quote-unquote legacy print collections. I want to next take us through just a few examples of some of the marginalia and interventions that we found in UConn's library's circulating collections. The first example is a letter from John Nichols Go in 1846. The book in which we found this letter was a gift, a peace offering in effect, from a prominent English printer, John Nichols Go, to an unknown recipient. Go writes, "I have always regretted your secession from the Camden Society, until now that it gives me the excuse for requesting your acceptance of a copy of the book I have just edited." Nichols' letter was glued onto the book's flyleaf. The unknown recipient of this letter had evidently resigned from the Camden Society, which Nichols had founded in 1838, following some sort of dispute, and this letter was designed as a reconciliation measure by the founder of the Camden Society for this unknown recipient. We also found some very compelling examples of readers responding to the text. This particular book, In Hospital by William Ernst Henley, published in 1908, includes a poem called Children, Private Ward, and the poem is about sick children in an infirmary. On the page of the poem is written by hand an annotation See page 41, RLS. When we turn to page 41, we find that the owner or the reader of the book had copied in longhand a published letter by Robert Louis Stevenson, the author of Treasure Island. Both poem and letter allude to children in sickbed. The reader evidently felt that it was important to read the poem and the letter together. The reader may have felt some kind of deep personal connection to the theme of children suffering from illness. Our third example is a German travel guide to Italy that was published in 1902. It's filled with minuscule penciled reading notes in English about Italian art and geography. The flyleaf shows an ownership inscription in the name of Ida Prescott Clow, with an address in Berlin, Germany. I did some genealogical research and found that the owner of this book was a Bostonian and a Radcliffe College alumna who in 1902 was living and traveling in Europe, in Germany and Italy. Interestingly, she seemed to have journeyed solo in an era when society generally frowned on young women traveling unaccompanied. When she returned to the United States, it seems that she took up a post teaching at a girls' school in Farmington, Connecticut, not terribly far from one of our UConn campuses. And somehow all three of these books ended up in the UConn Library's collections, presumably through donation. So what are our next steps regarding book traces? The COVID-19 crisis naturally disrupted many of our plans, but we adjusted. We are currently working on transcribing some of the Marginalia we found and posting those transcriptions online at booktraces.org. I am delivering a guest lecture at the UConn Humanities Institute to connect book traces to research done on campus by faculty. I also wrote up the project for the library's newsletter. After COVID, we are hoping to host an intern to create exhibits and expand the shelf sample to our special collections. I'm also hoping to cross-pollinate book traces with historical library accession records to trace UConn's shift from an agricultural school to a comprehensive university. We're also thinking about encouraging our own patrons to submit their own photos of Marginalia found in the stacks. Other institutions have turned book traces into class projects. There are so many opportunities to build on this work. I will pause there. I look forward to your questions, whether at the end of this session or via email afterward. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for attending Customer Value Learning, Market Research Techniques in Libraries. As I mentioned in the abstract, information professionals and librarians are uniquely positioned to draw upon and use knowledge from a variety of disciplines in seeking to better serve our patrons and customers. This material is drawn from a marketing class I attended at the University of Tennessee Haslam College of Business as part of the Professional MBA program. Marketing is the customer-centric philosophy, strategies, and tactics necessary to consistently create, communicate, and deliver customer value. This was the Haslam College of Business definition that I was provided during the MBA program. In addition, marketing research can very simply be defined as finding out what customers want, getting that to them, and then making sure that they're satisfied with what they received. At this point, I'd like to place customer value determination within the broader context of market opportunity analysis. Market opportunity analysis is kind of a more focused definition of market research in that it entails all of those activities involved with, checking out the environment to try to find out what customers' preferences are, through determining what they value, to measuring their satisfaction, defining your market, and competitor analysis. So one of the insights that I took from this class is that the importance of customer value determination or customer value learning. As librarians, we do customer satisfaction measurement pretty regularly. We do a lot of customer surveys of our patrons to find out what they like. But one of the insights I took from this class is that customer value determination really should precede customer satisfaction measurement. That way, you understand what your patients or patrons desire, what their preferences are, so that way you can actually have something to measure your satisfaction surveys against. There are a number of activities that libraries participate in that are relevant to market research. In discovering and satisfying our patron needs, we have to find out what our patrons value and then provide that to them. In serving as a resource for our organization, we need to learn, what they require from us in terms of support for their accreditation and certification efforts, and demonstrating the value of our services to the funding organization. We need to speak their language. We need to understand what it is that they require from us in order for us to really make the case that we need to retain and expand our funding. The initial research for this project was conducted as part of a marketing assignment in my MBA program. I interviewed two of our heavy users of our library's consumer health information service. These were relatively short interviews, but the insights that we received really proved to us the value of the technique and what we could learn from it. To describe the laddering interview technique, we start with the basic attributes of the service. That's going to be, things like if they preferred receiving something in print. And the second step, we move on to questions about their interactions with the service. Did they get the material that they wanted as quickly as they expected? The final step is working our way up to their end states or goals. How did using the service make you feel? This is where we find the values of the patron, their end states, their goals. When interviews are completed, then we begin the construction of a customer value hierarchy. In this model, we can see the attributes at the bottom, consequences of the patron with the interaction with the service at the second level, and at the top, the end states or goals. In addition to all of the positives or benefits about learning more about customer values and what their end states are, there are a few cautions with using this technique. Now, as we move up the hierarchy, the findings, the insights that we receive are more abstract. They're less measurable. But at the same time, the values that our patrons have are more stable than their preferences for specific attributes. This is an example of one of the finished value hierarchies that we constructed, and in this example, you can see a mention of the print format, and that one of the insights that we found through this process was that for many of our patrons, they really prefer receiving print, something that they can touch, refer back to if they need to, and also we see the end states and goals: reduce stress, good feeling better informed. Though this wasn't really articulated in either of the examples, what I'm really seeing from this is a desire to have a greater sense of control over their health. So these are some insights that we've received. Our next steps will be to put together a full-scale qualitative research study. We've met with the qualitative research expert at our institution and have put together an interview guide and have submitted an application with our institutional review board. We're aiming for at least 10 participants, and with the refining of the technique, our hope is at some point in the future to be able to interview residents or other patron groups to find out what their values are. Thank you for attending my presentation, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Charleston conference.
Hi, my name is Jeff Mortimer, Discovery Services Librarian at Georgia Southern University. I'm joined by my colleague, Nikki Cannon-Ratch, who is our Open Educational Resources Champion and Liaison to the College of Science and Mathematics. For this presentation, we will describe how we use the LibGuides platform to host an OER chemistry textbook. Over the last decade, academic libraries have stepped up support for OER resources, including finding, vetting, transforming, and licensing OER content. But what about hosting? OER content comes in many forms, and faculty need the flexibility to update content over time. While institutional repositories have been widely adopted for this purpose, not all OER projects are well suited to document-based hosting. For example, our textbook includes a lot of dynamic content that needs to be edited by the faculty over time. By leveraging LibGuides' access and permission controls, as well as its ability to host custom XML, CSS, and JS plugins, we have adapted an existing library technology to support this project's relatively sophisticated hosting requirements. Given that hosting is integral to any OER project, we hope that our experience will be useful to librarians looking to expand OER hosting at their institutions. Nikki will now provide some background on this project.
The foundations of this project began in the spring of 2019 with a group of chemistry faculty participating in a faculty learning community for creating OER materials. One specific outcome of the FLC was encouraging faculty to apply for one of Affordable Learning Georgia's textbook transformation grants. The University System of Georgia provides these grants to fund faculty interested in adapting, adopting, or creating OER materials to replace the expensive course materials they are already using. This group of chemistry faculty teach an upper-level chemistry course required for all engineering majors at Georgia Southern. The original course materials were expensive, and the faculty knew from several anecdotal means that a large portion of students never bothered to purchase the materials. The faculty also felt students were completely disengaged from the materials, as they knew students struggled with relating what they were learning in this course to their major and future career goals. So this disengagement, as well as affordability, were the driving force behind the decision to explore OER options. Once faculty decided to overhaul the course materials, they began to explore options for hosting and delivering these resources to their students. Our faculty voiced the following desires and needs for whatever platform was chosen. They needed something that would handle large batches of imported materials. Like many faculty, the thought of creating from ground zero was a little intimidating, and so they chose to adapt an existing text from OpenStax. They needed to be able to edit the material easily and needed a low learning curve. No faculty feels they have the time to learn something tedious and non-intuitive. The faculty wanted the ability to integrate videos, insert new images, charts, graphs, problem sets, surveys, etc. Remember, their goal was to make this material more engaging and relatable to engineering majors. This platform had to be compatible with the current LMS system being used by the university, and they wanted the ability to capture analytics, both for their own curiosity and to meet reporting requirements for the ALG Textbook Transformation Grant. Finally, our faculty wanted something that would create something aesthetically pleasing they could adapt to future changes and needs of the course. Luckily for all of us, the SpringShare LibGuides platform checked all of these boxes and then some.
So as Nikki describes, the faculty wanted to revise an existing OER chemistry text for their engineering students. At the time, OpenStax allowed visitors to download the XML source files for their chemistry first edition textbook, which the faculty felt they could adapt without reinventing the wheel. While the XML would need to be cleaned up and the CSS recreated, migrating OpenStax core HTML and MathML formatted equations looked manageable. Before committing, we migrated a test page with equations and verified that we could display them correctly by linking the MathJax JavaScript library to the LibGuide. In short, our development process fell into 3 steps: testing and importing content, revising content, and cleanup and go live. Our first step was to secure the OpenStax content and conduct the initial import. To do this, we downloaded and archived OpenStax XML source files. We conducted proof of concept testing to ensure that the content could be migrated. We decided which content to migrate and created the textbook shell and libguides. And we developed and followed a migration workflow, including steps to pre-process OpenStax XML before importing the resulting HTML into libguide's rich text HTML fields. To do this, we used Notepad++ and Adobe Dreamweaver for batch revisions prior to importing. Not surprisingly, we had to troubleshoot and tweak our migration workflow throughout the migration process. Second, the faculty took over for several weeks to revise the content we had migrated. To do this, they revised or replaced text and images. They revised page names, section headers, and example problems. They updated or prepared new equations in MathML using Microsoft Word's equation editor tools. And they prepared and added revised problem sets and assessments. While the teaching faculty focused exclusively on content updates, needless to say, these revisions wreaked havoc on the underlying HTML, especially on imported section divs and classes that would be employed later to apply CSS styling. Fortunately, enough artifacts of the original structure remained for us to perform batch corrections using Notepad++ and Dreamweaver. Third, once the content was complete, we were able to finish cleaning up the HTML and apply CSS. To do this, we verified numbering and anchors for all sections, figures, tables, and examples. We restored and verified all CSS-related divs, IDs, and classes. We developed and applied guide-level CSS, and we repaired any outlying content and display issues. After cleaning up the HTML and applying CSS, we advised the teaching faculty on strategies for making any additional revisions, as well as to let us revise the content for them if need be. While we did run into some hiccups with libguides, it's not an overstatement to say that libguides made this project possible. The cons of using libguides are largely related to managing and updating large chunks of HTML, something the platform was not really built for. However, most of these issues can be addressed by pre-processing HTML in a standalone editor such as Notepad++ before importing it into libguides, then stacking rich text HTML fields to sidestep libguides' character limits. On the other hand, the pros for using libguides included its cost and familiarity, similarity to other content management systems, flexible permission and access controls, and customizability, including the ability to include the MathJax JavaScript library we needed to display equations. In short, with a little bit of patience and know-how, even larger OER projects involving dynamic content are potentially manageable in libguides. So we say give it a try, and don't hesitate to contact Nikki or myself if you need any help or have any questions. Thanks.
Thanks for coming to our presentation today about our personal narratives project. We are at Seton Hall University, which is a private Catholic university in South Orange, New Jersey. Seton Hall consists of 11 schools and colleges with an undergraduate enrollment of about 5,800 students and a graduate enrollment of 4,400, about 10,000 total. It is classified as an R2 institution with high research activity. So there was quite a large team that worked on putting this project together in the past spring. There was myself, Sarah Ponek-Terra, Assistant Dean for Special Collections, and my colleague and co-presenter, Sharon Ince, Digital Services Librarian. We also had a large team, including our main faculty contact, Angela Kutsonis, who is an instructor in the College of Communication and the Arts, as well as other faculty and staff who collaborated and helped us get the word out about this project. So in the spring, as the pandemic began to unfold, we all became aware that this was a historic moment that future historians would want to explore and document. As archivists, we know that history usually focuses on a small subset of people who happen to be at the right place at the right time with the right resources to document their perspectives and experiences. Projects like this, which aim to collect historical reflections from the general community, hope to open up the historical record to include a wider variety of people. And with the advent of cell phone technology, everybody has a recording device in their pocket that can actually record and share their perspective to be shared with future generations. Of course, we can't take the credit for coming up with this concept. It was quite widespread in the spring with a New York Times article. And in fact, one of the first projects was actually based on Omeka and was called the Journal of the Plague Year, which was run by historians and archivists from Arizona State, Fordham, and other institutions. There are also web archiving efforts to document and preserve this moment at the Library of Congress. So Sharon will now tell you about how we put together this project in our eRepository.
So we decided to use our institutional repository, Digital Commons by vPress, because we knew that we could very quickly get this set up and that it was very intuitive for the user to use. We had a lot of help from our vPress representative, Mo Frenchman, who is amazing in helping us get this collection set up very quickly. What you're seeing is actually a book gallery in Digital Commons, and we were able to make that a video gallery for the purpose of this project. We first started with changing some of the fields so that it accommodates just audio or video, and also tweaking the metadata. We had a very simple metadata form because we want to encourage users to participate. So it's title, date, names, location, and a couple keywords. On the front end, we gave a narrative about the project and a couple prompts for students to respond to the project, as well as a copyright statement. Most of our submissions came from class assignment, so we did receive a large number of submissions, and we only encountered a few issues where sometimes the students would send in a video and it was not the right orientation, so we would do that for them, or they would use a copyrighted image. In that case, we used our backend module to manage this and send an email to the students requesting that they find an image that is copyright free, or we will replace it with our standard thumbnail for the project. So overall, we had a very positive experience with the students, and it gave them, for some of them, a lesson in copyright as well. I'm going to turn it back to you, Sarah.
Okay. So I'll just conclude by saying that we promoted this project not only on our library social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, but also on our website. As you can see here, this is the main landing page. And we created a unique LibGuide with the link to the project, a little bit about the context, and instructions for how to complete the form. And we're using this same technology actually this fall to create another project called Mi Voz, which is part of Hispanic Heritage Month and wants to collect personal stories from people reflecting on their experiences as Hispanic students at Seton Hall. So thanks very much. Without further ado, we'll turn it over to our colleagues from University of New Mexico.
Thank you, Sarah and Sharon. My name is Lori Sohn, and I am the data manager for the University of New Mexico's Health Science Library and Informatics Center. I am joined by my colleague, Jonathan Pringle, Scholarly Communications and Digital Librarian. On March 11th of this year, our New Mexico governor declared a public health emergency in response to the pandemic and created a medical advisory team that brought state officials, healthcare providers, and community members together to compile and disseminate scientific findings regarding this virus. Together, we created 58 individual briefings that can be found in our UNM digital repository using Digital Commons by vPress. This pie chart shows a breakdown of the 68 contributors to the daily COVID-19 briefings by profession. The medical students were unable to provide direct patient care during the pandemic, so their work on this briefing was approved for academic credit in their COVID-19 block. This project resulted in the submission of a manuscript to the Journal of Medical Internet Research. We use Microsoft Teams for manual and automatic capture of articles with an average of 456 articles collected daily. Duplicate URLs were eliminated and articles were prioritized by relevant importance. Priority was given to sources with the highest quality of evidence, such as randomized control studies and systematic reviews with meta-analyses. Summaries were edited, and completed tasks auto-populated the briefing content into an Excel spreadsheet that ultimately moved into a Word document. Some of the sections included New Mexico highlights, healthcare policy recommendations, testing, and clinical trials, to name a few. An IRB-approved survey helped us assess the impact of the briefing on our readers. The scale was from strongly disagree in dark red all the way to strongly agree in dark blue. 95% agreed or strongly agreed that the briefing helped them gain relevant knowledge. 72% changed their response to the pandemic. 79% reported the briefings helped them combat public misinformation, and 89% said it helped to clarify the information of other data sources. The daily briefings influenced dozens of policy decisions, including mandating universal mask use, drug treatments, and other items listed here. And now I'll hand this over to Jonathan.
Well, thanks, Lori. I want to highlight a complementary piece to these daily briefings that acts as a documentation strategy, providing snapshots of everyday people's experiences throughout the pandemic. Considering we are a health sciences library, we wanted to encourage contributions in this space to emphasize the pandemic through the lens of health and wellness. Our project joins numerous other pandemic documentation efforts in the state. But what notably sets ours apart is that submitters from the public provide content and the associated metadata directly through the repository, leaving either Lori or me to simply quality control and approve. This space is available to all. Submissions of content has come from myriad creators, including staff, faculty, and students from our Health Sciences Center, as well as from members of the public in our community. Writings and photographs here offer unique personal observations, particularly from early on in the pandemic. In addition to the benefit this space provides with building community, these invaluable items will provide profound accounts for future historic research into this time. We are excited to find new and engaging ways to promote further use of this space.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Mitchell from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I'm going to give a very condensed and fast-paced presentation on innovation and discovery and delivery systems. Even though we've been developing and using discovery systems for a number of years, we're still at a crossroads or at a pivot point. This is a point that a number of people have made. Call your attention to the third point in this slide. A study done by OhioLink and Ithaca S+R, co-authored by Roger Schonfeld, entitled "It's Not What Libraries Hold, It's Who Libraries Serve." 2020, I would encourage everyone to look at that. Calls for a fundamental reorientation to the needs of the academic user and a fundamental re-architecture of our discovery systems and ILSs. So actually a very exciting time for discovery system development work. We have at our fingertips now technologies and tools for developing custom discovery systems. Includes the general use of DOIs in all aspects of scholarship, robust APIs, asynchronous search techniques, and information on user behavior studies. Brief timeline of modern discovery. Right now, we're in the age of web-scale discovery systems. Very common to see these in academic libraries. But we're also seeing our hybrid bento-style systems. Bento systems use WSDSs as for content and also use broadcast searching to go out and pull the content from multiple silos. Very rich literature on web-scale discovery systems. Link here to a bibliography. Studies show that there is confusion by users with blended result displays. Merging articles, books, conference proceedings, newspapers, theses and dissertations, etc. The relevancy rankings of these web-scale discovery systems and their inability to address good known item searching. So the advantages that bentos provide, the bento approach provides, is because they partition results by material type, they address these WSDS issues with blended results, relevancy ranking problems, known item access. They also incorporate full library discovery features. This is a phrase coined by Lorcan Dempsey, providing local information services and content within the web scale discovery system. It's a listing of what we're now tracking for bento libraries. You can see this is a lot of ARL libraries, but also some small libraries. We're monitoring these 42 academic libraries with the bento instances. They're using WSDSs for articles, web scale systems for articles. And you can see that's kind of a even breakdown. They also incorporate searches of databases, journal titles, and some full library discovery features such as course reserves, context to local individuals, subject librarian context. Page from the Illinois bento system. Search here for CRISPR gene splicing technique. You can see that results are partitioned into articles on the left-hand side. We're using EBSCO EDS API and Scopus API for those results. Primo results, library catalog results in the center, additional suggestions on the right-hand side, including other major databases. You'll see here in the article display links to data sets, open access links, cited by materials, issue table of contents, and also altmetric scores. Those appear because the Illinois API adds to the, merges in the EBSCO, to the EBSCO and Scopus API results, a number of other value-added links. Altmetric badges giving attention scores, Scolix derived dataset links, usually links to data site or a particular dataset repository, on paywall links showing OA articles, browsing links in the table of contents, and link resolver links. We also incorporate search suggestions, direct links for frequent searches, GUI detection, LibGuide links, etc. Now, we learned a lot from the Illinois custom transaction logs, the logs of our bento system. We identified a number of important user behaviors. Two that I want to point out. Right now, we're seeing the average words per query inched up to 6.2. So this goes up every time we do an analysis. We still see some very simple searches, 1 word, 3 word or less, typical simple topic or exploratory searches, but 21% of all the searches are 9 words or more. Also see that in a sample we took looked at 5,400 of these searches, 65% of them were known item searches. That's also up from a previous study. So in addition, search suggestions that we offer are being used. Did you mean and the direct suggestion links are very popular. We're seeing a lot of copy and pasting searches. We're seeing a lot of DOI searches and a lot of citation searches. If we look at the user click-through events within the bento categories, you'll see that predominantly the article links are used most heavily, 57.1% of all the click-throughs. But even some of the things like library contact links, which are very small percentage, we're still seeing those once or twice per day in our system. A few observations about bentos. So the feature sets vary. So when we don't do spell checking, provide top-level direct links. There's only 3, including ours, that provide 1 link to full text. They do allow local control and customization, but they require programming server staff, and you have to be able to understand and process APIs. Real quickly, a number of other additional technologies that are on the horizon to augment displayed records, additional records, to utilize all the silos we're seeing, all these custom silos, utilizing machine learning and AI techniques, and integration of complementary library digital services like linked open data, data management, publication metrics, and visualizations. Thank you for your time. Any questions, please send them to my email.
Okay, wonderful. Thank everybody for your work, hard work, and your presentations. this is at the point where we've got about 20 minutes or so to have any questions and answers. I'm not sure, let's see, who are doing my questions in the chats. Do we have any questions for the chats? Okay, here we go.
We do have one question from the Pathable interface. Will the slides be available after the presentation?
That is a good question. This is being recorded, right? So they could access it that way.
The presenters can add their slides on the Files tab in the Pathable interface, or they can email them to me. This is Leah, and I can add them for them.
Wonderful, thank you. Awesome. So do we have any questions outside of the chat?
Okay. Not seeing any yet. I'm not seeing any questions yet.
All right. Well, I would like to go ahead and just kind of, well, if it's okay, just kind of, I guess just kind of ask my own kind of questions, because all these are fantastic topics and everything. And I may go kind of in reverse order. I may start with Bill with his bento style, because this is fascinating to me, because to have your results pull up partition like that, this is, to me, it just makes more sense and it's easier for the users. Do you have any kind of information about, your users and what they have responded to using this kind of style?
So we've done a couple of surveys. We did one last fall where on the result pages we put a couple of questions or a link to a survey, and overwhelmingly people were happy with this approach. And I think some of the other libraries, I know Smith College has published, Rob O'Connell has published a couple of articles on the use of the bento system at Smith. There's been a few others in the literature. I think the approach seems to be quite popular with users. And what we're really trying to do here is address some of these problems with confusion about blended search results. Everybody, with a bento system, you know where the article results are, you know where the book results are, you know where the dissertation results are, for example.
Right.
And particularly since we're finding that a lot of people, in our case, 65% are coming in with a known item before they start doing the searches. That's been, the bento approach is really adapts itself well to that. They know they're looking for an article, or they know they're looking for a book, so they know exactly where to find it. So overall, the response has been very satisfying, and the user surveys show that people are quite pleased and are able to use this approach.
Well, that's great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
So we do have,
oh, go ahead.
Excuse me. Yeah, we do have a few questions in Pathable. Regarding book traces, Michael, what are your guidelines for what to have your student capture?
That's a great question. Basically, for the purposes of the shelf sample, we considered that any intervention of any kind was acceptable, whether it was a name scribbled in the corner or writing in the margins. We did have a few criteria, so we wanted to try to eliminate more recent markings. We wanted to keep to that pre-1925 books and pre-1925 readers. So in general, we said no highlighting. And we took a close look at any pencil markings and sort of ballparked what our estimated age of those was. So we tried to gauge the age of the markings and limit accordingly. But we did that but that kind of inspection of the text we did after the fact. We basically told our student, no highlighting, everything else is fair game. And then we went through the photos afterward. we also went to the stacks and grabbed some of the books that she commented were heavily marked up or had more marginalia than she was able to photograph. So we took those and went through them ourselves as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Michael. We have a question for Jeff and Nikki. For the OER textbook and LibGuides, how much library staff programming time or skills were needed?
Yeah, great question. Really, Nikki and I were chatting on the back end, sort of planning our answer, because it's really a two-part answer. In terms of direct work with faculty on the front end, and then some of the programming and site management work. So I'm going to let Nikki sort of speak to her experience first, then I'll speak to mine.
Okay, so as an instructional librarian, this has been a very hands-on project with these faculty members that started with that faculty learning community I was talking about. So that was a 6-week learning environment for them, where we just learned about OER and what it meant and the different license, and they discussed the course they wanted to overhaul, and we of course explored options. Then there was a lot of getting to know the LibGuide. We used the LibGuide in the faculty learning community. They liked it, they liked what it did, so they were interested. Then there were several training sessions because we wanted them to have the power to edit content and create within the LibGuide. So Jeff and I worked together to get them trained. Now, again, as an instructional librarian, it didn't seem like a huge time commitment on my part because it's just part of my job. And these are my liaison people. So I'd be working with them in some aspect, whether it was on this project or some other project. But Jeffrey may have kind of a different opinion about the time commitment for this project.
Well, most of my time on this project was spent developing the LibGuide and working with Nikki and the faculty to sort of flesh it out. And I think part of the answer really is contingent on your faculty members' experience with things like HTML and CSS and MathML. We were really fortunate to work with a group of chemistry faculty who had prior experience with these things. So what I really focused on in my development was developing a workflow that they could manage with their skills, which might involve just like ensuring that there's an opening tag and a closing tag, in the HTML. But establishing the workflow and then doing a lot of the cleanup work, if we're thinking in terms of hours, it was probably 20 to 40 hours of work all told. My feeling, and Nikki, probably I've got to believe you feel the same way. It was time well spent because we developed a textbook that is having a very significant impact on the courses that are using it. And
if anyone else is interested at all in OER, the results they saw from their students going to this textbook have been phenomenal. It has checked every box in my OER programs and has become a prime example. I mean, DFW rates dropped, class grades went up, engagement went up. It's just been a phenomenal response for them, and they have really embraced this text.
In terms of raw skill, coding skill and stuff, I mean, I got by with my, self-taught, sort of just basic HTML and CSS skill, being able to troubleshoot, an ID or a class or something like that. I had to know enough how to link a JavaScript library in, but fortunately, once it was linked in, it automatically, generated the formatted equation. So again, it's really contingent on the complexity of the content you're working with and the preparedness of your faculty. And that was part of our calculus. We knew we were working with people who could handle it, and we did the proof of concept to make sure we would not be underwater.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's good. That's good. Do we have any more chat questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, yeah, I would like to kind of, first of all, just under Jonathan Pringle's, all their presenters. First of all, I'd like to comment that what a wonderful learning experience for your students to understand copyright. Immediately say, oh, you just violated copyright laws. That's fantastic. What a lesson learned. But I'd like to, kind of know more about how, you can use this in the future. I know you're looking at, personal experience from the Hispanic point of view. I think that's a wonderful thing. But where else can you take this,
It's really a flexible platform because it can take these texts that first were oral histories for the first project. So the idea was that people would sort of record themselves speaking, but since it's the institutional repository, it can accept written text, it could accept audio, video, any kind of format. And so we're looking at using it for more diverse projects in the future. So definitely the Hispanic Heritage Month event was a way to open it up a little bit more beyond the original context, which was the collaboration with the professor of basically speech. And so she used this as an assignment, but we opened it up to the broader community. But definitely in the future, we want to explore and see what could be possible in terms of written text, even artistic works, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay. There's also, I want to address kind of Michael Lindsay's project as well, because we had a discussion, just me and him, because I think a lot of times in library, we have a tendency to, kind of offer a service and then turn around and say, okay, we're going to evaluate it. So we really don't do kind of that pre-test kind of like market analysis that, he is offering here. And so could you just give us a little bit more on how we, I guess, as librarians, maybe, those in charge of services, resources, how can we best utilize that?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because kind of the more that I think about it, I keep thinking about, I guess one of the things about seeing this that really just impressed me the first time was seeing some commercials for tires. And I hate buying tires, and there's this little, I saw this little YouTube video. I was trying to, I wasn't really sure whether I would have enough time to put it in, and decided in the end that I didn't. But there's this little baby, like, just walking up to this top, to this thing that's like covered in a blanket. And it's obviously, this is like the mom's like mind's eye, while she's talking with her, I guess, teenage daughter or whatever about, her first car and handing her the keys. And so the baby comes up and there's this little blanket that's over this thing, and she pulls the blanket off and it's a tire. It's like you have to, first off, I'm going to make sure that you have good tires. So it's kind of like, wow. That's, it's kind of like gets to the values of that person, and just, making sure that your family is safe. So I mean, I can feel perfectly fine about spending money, on something that I wouldn't ordinarily want to spend it on, because I know that it's helping to keep myself and my wife safe. And so it's a pretty kind of powerful technique. I mean, from the perspective of somebody that's, trying to sell you something, but from the librarian's perspective, I mean, while we don't make money, per se, I think that one of the really exciting things about, using a technique like this and learning about what our patrons value is that, because we don't have to make money, we can focus on things that, on projects that are perfectly in line with our values. If our values are to, to connect our users with information that they need, and that is going to help them to feel more in control. If they've got if they've received a diagnosis and they're confused about it, And, as we all know, well, as medical librarians know, there's a lot of interesting phenomena that goes on when you receive a diagnosis. Some of the research that I've seen essentially says that, your IQ like drops, 10 or 20 points because you're scared, because you've received this diagnosis. And if you have the right kind of information, then you can help kind of, get back, get yourself back into a position where you feel more in control about what's going on in your life. So I think that, you can look at that and realize that that's very valuable to people. And that's a very solid service that, that we can provide as librarians to people that are, going through something very difficult in their lives. So some of the things I keep thinking about with it too is finding out, digging in a little bit more. I think the real challenge with working with like residents and faculty is being able to get their time. And because it, takes about 30, 45 minutes to do one of these kinds of interviews. But, if we can, learn about, what they are really wanting, there's a lot of kind of mystery. We have been, collecting some very good data for many years, but I still feel like that we don't really know, what our residents and faculty want. So I think that there's just a lot of potential with a technique like this that to help us, really connect with their users.
Yeah, and I agree. A lot of times we rely on vendors to say, hey, here's a product and your patrons will need this. They'll want this. They'll want that. And so we rely a lot on that. And a lot of times we rely so much that we may spend money on it only to do an evaluation of it later to find out they didn't really need it. So yeah. I think if we can, on the front end, take care of that and get a better idea of what they need, then, what benefit would be for us, especially in financial times that we're going to be in or already in.
It was really kind of a serious aha moment when I read about, customer value measurement versus customer satisfaction measurement, and that, without really knowing what those values are, you don't know what you're measuring that satisfaction against. They can say, hey, yeah, I'm satisfied with the library, but, that may not actually mean that much. So.
That's right. All right. So we are at the 5 o'clock mark. I think, you guys have done a fantastic job. I think we got a lot of narrative, historical things. You guys can probably collaborate on some ideas. I think, we got some great technology coming up through. This is fascinating, wonderful stuff. So do we have any more questions in the chat or?
No, we don't.
Okay. Can I ask if anyone has questions or can they respond or?
Seeing a lot of thank yous.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of thank yous, thank you guys so much for taking this time and doing all this hard work and presenting today. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. And I guess for those who are still in attendance, you can always reach out to these presenters and, get further information from them as well. Okay. I guess that sums everything up. But again, thank you guys so much. And you guys have a wonderful night and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, everybody. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.